Academy Award nominee Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor plays Hattie in Romel Ross's Nickel Boys. Thanks for joining me today. You're a veteran in this industry, and I know you were excited to work with Romel on his feature debut, and he'd made documentaries before. What was it about him that excited you and made you want to work with him?
Yeah, I saw Ramel's work in thanks first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Um yeah, I saw Ramel's work in Hale County this evening. And I saw it in Brooklyn with my friend Ty. And I just felt like I was witnessing the work of a filmmaker who was affirming and caring about my existence as a Southern woman, as a Black Southern person. Um, I often see representations or portrayals of Black Southern life, Black Southern rural life, and feel like I'm, an alien in a fishbowl, that this person doesn't understand me and has no interest in understanding me, that it is just the picture that matters and some sort of preconceived notion about who I am and what I am. But I felt like this person, this filmmaker, this artist, um, had lived this, had lived something that I lived. And that just made me so excited. And I wanted to know who he was. I left that theater and went on my phone. I was like, who is this person? And then I found out that he was a professor at Brown, and I went to Brown. So I remember the phone number at the school, and I called the school to try to speak to him, and that didn't work. And so then I emailed him one of those addresses that professors give out that they never check those accounts at all. But I emailed him anyway. Um, so yeah, I felt that what I experienced in Hell County, I felt that that was the kind of director and human being that he was. And I was just excited about whatever narrative thing that he would do.
So how did you connect to him then? If your emails were lost, how did you connect for this film?
If my emails were lost or never checked, um, more like it. Yeah, they a couple years later, I guess, I don't remember exactly the timing of it, but they reached out, conventional ways, manager, agent reached out. I think whoever reached Plan B reached out, um, and said that Nickel Boys was a possibility and there might be something in it for me. And I said I didn't care. I just wanted to be in it. You know what I mean? It wasn't going to be the lead. It wasn't going to be any of those things, but I just wanted to be in that man's world.
And it was a Pulitzer Prize winning novel that the film is based on. I hadn't read it. I didn't know about this until I saw the movie.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts going into it? Like, were you prepared for this subject matter, and had you read the book?
I had not read the book, and I still have not read the book. My intention behind that was I believe fervently that adaptations and books are two completely different art forms. And
Yeah.
I think for me, as a bibliophile and as an actor, I want to go in service of the adaptation and not the book. I don't want to bring any preconceived anything from my experience of reading the book. So I wanted those fresh eyes. But no, I knew of the book by reputation, knew of Colson Whitehead, of course, by reputation, but knew just vaguely about this happening or what happening at the Dozier School. When I was a kid, we all had that, cousin or relative that was sent to reform school, some child that had run afoul of the formal education system and they had to be handled by alternative forms of education or school or something like that. You went to reform school, you went to military school. Um, but I did not understand um, that something like this could happen. you know? Um, and it did. It happened at the Dozier School in Marianna, Florida. Um, Children died. They were brutalized. They were sexually assaulted. And we are just now coming into realizing the fullness of what happened at that place.
Yeah. And Hattie plays Elwood's grandmother. What do you bring to Hattie? Is this a woman that you knew in your life? Like, how do you approach that role?
Well, when I got to work, I read the script, and I had a wonderful script. We had a wonderful script, and when I say wonderful, I don't mean it as, an expression of good, or, I mean it was full of wonder,
Yeah.
scene by scene by scene. I was brought into a world that was strange, and all of them were portals. So yeah, I had that to pull from. Um and I don't come into, usually anyway, come into something with a a fully realized characterization, you know. Um I don't. I wish I could sometimes, but I don't, I just have to hopefully have, great people that I'm working with and I can respond with and play with, and a great script. And I had all of those things. But with this movie, I couldn't look at my coworkers.
Yeah.
I was really by myself in this space. But I think ultimately it worked because it was aligned with the fact that Hattie was very much by herself, in the world, having been, separated from her grandson. But now in retrospect, I'm realizing how much Hattie is my grandmother.
Mm.
And I wasn't aware of it at the time, and I guess that's what I mean by the fullness of a characterization. So there was no intention to do my grandmother, but now I'm realizing how much not just my physical DNA is in me because of my grandmother. The physical DNA is of my grandmother's obviously inside me, but also the DNA of her integrity, the DNA of um her 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 capacity for love.
Yeah, she has, I mean, because when she shows up, we see her and she's like, where is her grandson? She's going through all of these mental things, but she's very put together. Like, she's not going to show you that,
Yeah.
like, they're not going to take her down with them.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we really arrived at that when we were shooting, because Ramel and I talked about what is the effect of this, incredibly, this violence that is happening to her. What is the effect? What does that do to her? Is she suffering? Of course she's suffering, but does she have a breakdown? And so we were about to do one of the scenes, and we both were thinking like, yeah, maybe her clothes are a little askew, her wig's a little off, you know what I mean? Her hair's a little off because, she is showing that how affected she is by what is going on in her life at the moment. And then we did one take of it, and both of us said, no, that's not right. And I think you're right. You're exactly right. Is that at least what was happening inside of me that I wasn't aware of, but now I'm aware of it. My grandmother always looked put together. You know what I mean? She always was looking cute. She always had her cute shoes on, her cute dress. She always she always did that. She was always that. But also, she was a woman who went through hell,
Hmm.
went through hell. Her husband was taken from her. He was arrested and taken to jail um, for something that he didn't do. And she did not know whether he would return to her. And she was the mother of seven children. And did not know whether her husband was going to return to her during that time where people would be taken from their homes by the police, which was really just an auxiliary of the Klan at the time in southern Mississippi, in 1964. We didn't know whether people were going to come home or not. But the thing is, my grandmother never told me that story. She never shared that with me. Other people told me that. Other people told me that she went through that. But she carried that in her. You know what I mean? She
Wow.
carried that fear, that insanity of the world, that violence that happened to her. She carried that while she was looking cute, you know? So I think that's what Hattie was and is.
And Ethan Parisi plays Elwood. You played his mom in When They See Us. So you'd actually worked together before. What was it like to see him now? And you're playing Hattie's his grandmother in this. So what was it like to reunite with him and see what he's become as an actor since that time?
Yeah, Ethan Harisi. I played Yusef Salam in When They See Us, one of the exonerated five, and I played his mother, Sharon Salam. And I just thought that I just adored Ethan, when we worked on that. And he was about to go to school. He was about to go to college when we finished that. And now he is a college graduate with a degree in freaking chemistry of all things. Come on, man. And then, he comes back, he re-enters my life as my, as the leading man of this movie. He is one of the most graceful, elegant, people, young or old, that I know. Um, he's a thing of beauty.
Yeah. I got to interview him and Brandon together, and it's funny because they're very different, but they complement each other so well.
Isn't
And
that fun? Isn't it funny? Like they're so different.
yeah. And you had a great scene with Brandon as well. That heartbreaking moment where you're like looking for Elwood and you're like, where is he? And you speak to Brandon. What was that scene like? Because that scene also is we see that unique point of view, that first person where we go in for the hug and we see Brandon hugging you, but it's just like the camera coming in. So that whole scene was emotional, unique, visually. What was that like for you?
Yeah, that was a bit of a tough day. Because there was a Ramel gave us a lot of space, but there's a lot of technical work that's involved in it. And I think that day was one of those days where I was feeling the technical part of the job a little bit. And I had to really lean on him a lot. Where in other jobs, I probably would try to fight for a little more freedom. I leaned on him quite a bit just to be like, okay, is this what you need? Is this what you're trying to get? Because the camera had to do the storytelling, more also almost more as much as me, it had to do it. So that was tough. That was tough. That was more of a tough day because I couldn't see Brandon, I couldn't see him. And he just has the most beautiful, vulnerable eyes, tender, you know, but I couldn't see him.
So you have to make it work.
Yeah, I had to remember it. I had to look at him, I touch him beforehand and just try to keep it present in my mind.
I read this book one time by a music producer, Narada Michael Walden, and he'd worked with like all the great voices. And he said in his book that Aretha Franklin and Whitney Houston were the only singers that liked the sound of their own voice when they would hear it, like they loved their own sound. I'm curious, and everyone else was like weird about it or like felt uncomfortable. As an actor for you, what is it like to watch yourself when you see yourself on screen? Do you love it or are you critical? What is it like for you?
I avoid it at all costs
Why?
because I'm not Whitney Houston and I'm not Aretha Franklin. I mean, they're the sonic versions of that. I'm not the visual, equivalent of that. I'm not that. So I don't want to, I'm not it. I'm when I tell you I avoid it at all costs, I avoid it at all costs. I mean, like even doing ADR, I have them, set it up so I don't have to look at myself. Because every time I go see these things, I get in my feelings, I get suicidal. I don't want to leave bed out of for 2 days. It
Wow.
it clearly is not helpful. So, I need to be a functioning person. So yeah, no, sir.
Well, your first Emmy nomination was for When They See Us. Then you get one for Lovecraft Country, and an Oscar nomination for King Richard. So you're doing something right. What are these accolades like for you at this point in your career, especially that Oscar nomination?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought I would get nominated for anything ever, ever. And I'm not even joking. So it was all like it was all like, uh, absurd to me because it never felt like a it never felt like a possibility at all. With the King Richard more specifically was very, very satisfying because I was a part of something that honored people that I just think the world of.
Yeah.
In Venus and Serena, of course, but in their mother, Miss Oracine Price. Um, I have just an extraordinary amount of respect for her and knowing she did what she did, which is teach Serena Williams how to play tennis and hold a job and be a provider for the family, one of the major provider for the family, and be the cook and be the, seamstress. She did all of those things and, was never really recognized for that. So I felt like that was my way of correcting that wrong.
What do you tell young actors now that you've done so much in your career that like what do you have to go into this business with? Because a lot of people think, oh, you're going to be rich and famous when you're 25. That's like a Hollywood fantasy. So what is the mindset a actor truly has to enter this business with?
Well, I didn't enter it with any sort of with any intention at all, So I had some, hard knocks because of that. I think what can preserve you if you do enter it with intention. So that can preserve you when things are scarce, when you have been, someone says something that is hurtful, when you feel all those bad things, that can keep you going. When you can tell yourself, this is my goal. I don't care. I'm gonna keep, it'll keep you, with forward progress. But I didn't have that. So, the hard knocks affected me in a way that someone else would not be affected by. I think that, what I think that, someone asked me the other day, what's your secret to longevity? And I was saying all this stuff, know your long, be kind, be cordial, be respectful, know what you're doing, don't collapse into conformity, don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
Don't be an
That's
asshole.
that's good advice for anyone and to go out on. And Anjanou, congratulations on Nickel Boys. It's a beautiful movie and good luck to you, the whole cast and crew this award season. And thanks for chatting with Gold Derby today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for the time.